United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I have a few items I'd like to mention. First off, I'd like to thank Representative Gene Pulowski for being instrumental in bringing the Minnesota legislature to Winona last week for a mini session which engaged the council members and the public, and I think it was a really positive thing for the city. Anytime you can get 100+ legislators to your city to talk about and showcase and highlight all the good things that are going on in your community, I think it's a good thing. And I know that a lot of staff time, legislative staff, as well as City of Winona staff, and I'd just like to acknowledge especially the City of Winona staff that worked on this, and I'm not going to name them all because I know there were numerous people, but I just want to say a huge thank you, because from my perspective, it looked flawless, and if there were problems, I didn't see them, and I think it went really well. And I also like to mention that this weekend is the cemetery walk for the Winona County Historical Society at Woodlawn Cemetery. And if the weather forecast looks a little too cool and gusty, there's a Thursday night indoor performance this week at 7 o'clock if that's what you want to do. It's a great event and a good fundraiser for the society, so I hope you can do that. And I have a proclamation I want to read tonight. I see Crystal in the back there. Let me read it and then I'll present it to you if that's okay. This might help explain my purple hair tonight. The proclamation is, whereas domestic violence is defined as abusive behavior in a personal relationship that gives one member control and power over another through physical, emotional, sexual, economic, or psychological actions or threats, and whereas domestic violence continues to be the number source of all violent crimes in Winona, and whereas home should be a place of warmth, unconditional love, safety, and peace, and whereas the impact of domestic violence is wide-ranging, directly affecting individuals and society as a whole, here in this community, throughout the United States and the world. And whereas domestic violence can be prevented, preventing domestic violence requires the collective voice and power of individuals, families, institutions, and systems. Each adds a valuable and powerful component to transforming our communities. And whereas the City of Winona is an important partner in the Women's Resource Center of Winona's vision to create a safer community by eliminating domestic violence. Now therefore, I, Mayor Mark Peterson of the City of Winona, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Winona, and urge all citizens to observe this month by becoming aware of the impact of domestic violence and support those who are working toward its end. And with that, I'll ask the director of the Women's Resource Center, Crystal Heggie, if she'd like to come up and receive this, and if you want to say a few words, you're welcome to. Thank you very much. Did you want a picture, John?
She's taking a picture.
Oh, we'll do this a little more formally over here. Good brick and brain here. All right. Did you want to say a few words?
Sure.
Appropriate. Thank you. Hello?
Yep, it's working.
There you go. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this proclamation. My name's Crystal Heggie. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Resource Center of Winona. It is really important that we have a proclamation like this within Winona and throughout our communities. we can, with the help of the city and with the help of our partners within Winona, eliminate domestic violence by bringing it out, by talking about it, by sharing it among ourselves. It is not just something that needs to stay in the home. It is a crime, and it's something that we need to take seriously. So I appreciate that each and every one of you have made this important to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all. That's all I have. I'll ask the city manager if he has anything.
Just to reiterate, my thanks to the staff. If there were any failures or shortcomings in the meeting with the legislature, it's entirely my fault. So,
Oh.
thank you.
Wow. All right, roll call.
Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Councilman Thurley.
Here.
Mueller.
Here.
Alexander. Here. Iden. Here. Borzakowski.
Here.
Schollmeyer.
Here.
Under the required public hearings, item 2.1 is the proposed liquor license fee increases for 2020.
Make a motion to introduce the attached
That's a
ordinance.
public hearing.
Public
I'm so
hearing here.
sorry.
I'll declare the public hearing open and ask if there's anybody here that wishes to speak to the issue. Anybody here wish to speak to the issue about proposed liquor license fees? Not surprisingly, but I'll ask one more time. Anybody here wish to speak to the issue? Hearing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed and ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Paul. George?
Do we have to vote on both of these items as one? Because I support the 3% late fee, but I do not support, as I have done in the past 19 years, support the 3% liquor license increase. I know I stand alone on this, but
Mayor and council, I think it's all part of one motion currently. So if you wanted to separate that, you would have to make a motion to amend it to divide that out.
okay, I would so move to amend this to separate the two items.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion by George and a second by Michelle to divide them into two motions. Any discussion about this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We'll take up, which one first here? I guess George's,
I think the 3% just general raise in that license fee, I believe, would be first,
okay,
so.
all right. Any discussion on that? Al?
Yeah, how, can you explain this? How is it going to be calculated? Is it per month? Is there a time frame? You know, we have many things where there are late fees involved, but then there's usually a procedure that goes with it.
So the late fee would be if they are late bringing in their, if they miss the deadline for the applications to the city clerk, it would be assessed on the total amount of fees that are due. So if they have an on sale on a Sunday, it would be the total of those two licenses, it would be 3% of that total. It would just be a one-time
One-time.
late fee.
Okay, that clears it up.
Okay, other discussion? All right, guess we're ready to vote. And the motion is, just to be clear, the one we're voting on is the 3% late fee? No,
I think
No,
it's
the 3%.
the overall
The
3%
overall
increase.
3%.
Okay, all right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, 6-1 passes. And now the other motion for the,
I think we need a motion to approve that one then.
I would approve, I would so motion to approve the 3% late fee.
Second.
okay. Motion by George, and was that Eileen? Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
And under the petitions, requests, and communications, item 3.1 is a request by the Edge Church for a trunk or treat community event on October 31st.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Eileen. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 3.2 is to close Lafayette Street for the Masato Group visit on Thursday, October 24th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Eileen. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 3.3 is a street closure request by the Women's Resource Center for Sunday, October 27th.
So moved. I'll second.
Motion by Eileen and seconded by Michelle. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 3.4, an appointment to the Fine Arts Commission of Alessandra Solpi.
So moved.
Second.
Who made the motion? Okay, Michelle, and seconded by Paul. All right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 3.5 is a request for a 2-hour parking zone to be added on Franklin Street.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Paul. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 3.6, a request for 15-minute parking zone on Sioux Street.
Make a motion to approve the attached ordinance. Second.
A motion by Michelle, seconded by Eileen. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 3.7 is a request for no parking to be added on Huff Street as part of the bike striping pilot project.
I would move the attached ordinance. Second.
Motion by Pam and seconded by Michelle. Discussion? Al?
I'm going to vote opposed to this, and let me tell you my reasons for it. If we go ahead with the number one, if we go ahead with the striping project in October, we're going to be in the winter months, and those striping markings might fade away, be hit by a plow or something like that. I'm not sure how they're working. Number two, I think the springtime, which is, I guess, the next striping period that the city does, would be more conducive to generate cycling data, for one thing. Number three, because bike traffic is generally less in the winter months. Number three, it allows the businesses that are going to be affected by this removal of parking a chance to go through a holiday season without having to scramble for parking spaces. And enforcement, to me, is something that, if we do it now, is going to be difficult at best, to enforce the no parking and then to also enforce a 45-minute additional parking spaces along the side streets that are supposed to make up for the parking that's lost on Huff Street. I'm not against doing things for bicycle safety, but I think this is not the right time without additional study. I'd like to see staff go ahead and better study other ways to provide safe transportation for everybody on Huff Street, because it's a very narrow street. I've mentioned it before. And we could do a lot more in terms of developing a better bicycle path, a better place for people to park without having to go through the loss of parking in this particular instance. So again, I will not support this motion to remove the parking.
Okay, Michelle?
Well, I don't think there's a reason to delay. We're trying to look at it through all seasons, which gets us October, November, December, all the way to next summer, when we'd have the data for a full cycle. I don't care what time of year it is. It's not safe in the summer for the cars on Huff, so it's even worse in the winter. So my purpose for this whole plan is not so much about bikes, which is great. It's about getting that parking off of Huff Street, where they're currently parked in a traveling zone, and in the winter they're far into the traveling zone for the very reason that it's winter. And I don't think that enforcement of a no parking is going to be an issue. I think we don't enforce the 30 and 10-minute parking now. I think it would just mean that we would have to make a better effort of having the 45-minute enforcement enforced, and that would address that issue for those businesses. And then their clientele can get in and out of their business safely. I also think we're going to see an increased improvement in pedestrian safety, because cars won't be blocking those intersections, what makes it difficult for moving cars to view them as they try to pass the street. And I think everyone here can agree that Huff Street is heavily pedestrian and bike traveled. So I would not like to wait. I don't think waiting, since we already passed the ordinance to do this, I don't see why striping should wait at this point. It's the second part of the whole project. And if we hadn't had to do this by ordinance, it would already have been done. So I'd like us to move forward as indicated by the majority vote of council at the last meeting.
Pam?
Yes, after the last meeting, I still had some sympathy with the idea of waiting or finding another solution to this problem. But after talking to many people, I was surprised that many people agree with the idea of taking parking off of Huff Street because it is dangerous for people who park there, for people who drive there, and for people who want to cross. I mean, it just seems like an idea that should have been put into practice a long time ago. And I think that's especially true in the winter. The lights on Huff Street are better than they are in certain other parts of downtown, but it's still hard for students. I hear about the difficulty of getting across there when there's cars right up next to the intersection and the lights are low. So I'm very much in favor of this, and I'm looking forward to seeing it succeed.
Okay. George?
Yes, I've had some discussion this morning with some people on this, and, I see both sides, and I'm just thinking, I don't ever recall us ever getting into great detail about doing anything on Huff Street until we want to do this striping for a bicycle lane. Okay, fine. Some people say it's well-traveled. I know people that live right on Huff Street, and as one gentleman told me, he says, it is not that well-traveled. I don't know, I'm not there. If we're looking for a bike lane, and I shared this with the manager and some other members on council, that I think there is a better way, a safer way, to not have the bikes travel Huff Street and travel in another avenue that we talked about, which I won't get into big discussion tonight. But if we're looking just for bikes, there's another route I believe that they can take that would be a lot safer. My concern with the no parking is that the businesses that are there, they pay a high commercial tax rate. They contribute a lot. We all contribute a lot to the community, and just not going to point certain ones out. But I think until we come up with a better solution, I will support, along with Councilman Thurley, on this tonight. So, not against the striping, not against that, but the no parking, I think, is what our biggest issue is.
Yeah?
Just a quick rebuttal to the conversation here that I agree with Councilperson Borzakowski on this. And, I haven't looked at it, so I don't have the statistics in front of me, but we talked about safety, and I was curious about accident reports in that area. Have we had any details of any accidents that have happened? There's anecdotal, probably near misses, like there is with any street in our city with near misses, but we really haven't had any, at least that I can recall, any issues with close calls or screeching, brakes on either bikes or vehicles to prevent an accident. So again, I think the idea of improving safety is not as good a reason as it is in this instance to remove the parking.
Okay. Anybody else? Guess we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion, excuse me, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I think we're 5-2. Carries.
Item 3.8 is a request for a stop sign at Parks Avenue and Parks Avenue.
Make a motion to introduce the attached ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Eileen. Any discussion? Yeah.
Just a little history. This particular series of streets around here was named for Henry V. Parks, who was an alderman back in the alderman days of Winona's governance. And I have no idea why both of the legs of that particular road were named after him, but I'm sure it was probably more convenient than anything else. But I definitely support the request for a stop sign. But it honors Henry V. Parks, not parks in general being in that park area.
Do you know who he was?
Well, as I say, he was
An alderman?
He was an alderman. He also ran a moving and storage company in town, Parks Moving and Storage, as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mayor,
Yeah.
which ward did he serve?
You'd have to ask me.
Clearly the fourth ward, George.
I can't remember which
With a
one,
name like
because the
Parks?
wards,
Have to be
you know,
Parks.
because there were more members on council when there were alder people, aldermen,
Right.
which is the form of government we had before the charter, so I don't know for sure which one. He might have, I don't even want to hazard a guess.
Anyway, I think this is a good request because we're gonna see more activity
Yes.
there
Right.
with the YMCA and the growth of the hospital
Yep.
and their care facilities, so, it's gonna do good.
All right, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Under unfinished business, item 4.1 is the St. Croix Heights subdivision variance overrule.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I do have just a few slides here to go through real quick, since this was a couple meetings ago. On September 3rd is when we last discussed this, and at that time, Council directed staff to create findings overruling the Board of Adjustment's decision to grant variances for the St. Croix Heights subdivision. The findings that are in your packets are based on the discussion that occurred on the 3rd, and they represent the majority vote of council on the matter at that time, which in that case was 4-2. The resolution addresses all of the criteria that are necessary for a variance except for number 4, mainly because it's not needed given the affirmative findings of all of the other criteria to overrule the variances. So simply tonight, council options are adopt the findings as written or modify findings if needed.
All right. We have a motion.
Make a motion.
Second?
Motion by Eileen, and seconded by Paul. Open for discussion. If there's any, Michelle?
I'll be voting against this as I did that night. In some more research and discussion with staff, we are far more strict in our slope than any other surrounding city or even our county with the 18%. And even where most of the other counties or cities have 25%, they have a 30-foot or a 25-foot setback requirement. And I think when we set 18%, we didn't look at the setback, which is very large at the 50-foot setback. And so I think we could have looked at this in another way. And I also think maybe they showed what the largest houses that would be able to go up there are and not what houses were going to be built. So I think we're missing an opportunity here for development when we are in desperate need of homes for people moving here. So of course, I'm opposed.
Okay, any other comments? Paul?
So I seconded the motion, I'll be favoring it. I think there was a lot of consideration and thought put into the ordinance, and I'd like to think that our Board of Adjustment is considering items with a lot of detail and forethought when they make their decisions, and I just don't think that they thought very clearly about our ordinance. So if our ordinance needs to be changed, then that's something we should visit. But based on the ordinance as it is, I don't think the Board of Adjustment should have ever actually approved the request, and so I'll certainly be voting in favor of this.
Any other comments? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Was that George, were you opposed?
Yes.
Okay, so 5-2, motion passed. Oh,
One abstention.
One abstention, sorry.
Who's abstention?
Pam.
Oh, I don't. Item 4.2 is to award the contract for the Van Shell Playground project. Bids were opened earlier today. You received a memo from Mr. Ubel and a draft resolution to reject the bids as they were all over the estimated project total and rebid it in January of 2020.
I'd make a motion to adopt the attached resolution rejecting all bids and rebidding in January of 2020.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, and seconded by Eileen. Further discussion? Hearing none. George?
Yeah, we have base bid here and alternate bid. What, you just want to explain that?
Mayor and Council. The base bid includes primarily grading and surface work, and the alternate bids were for a bathroom enclosure. It's still porta potties, but to enclose it so that it wasn't just freestanding porta potties, a little bit more of a decorative look. The alternate bids also included the landscaping for the project, and the third alternate has something, it was related to the surfacing that will be in the playground. And just another note real quick, want to thank the Lions Group for all the efforts they put forth to collect the pledges and fundraise for this project. Certainly this project's going to happen. We think that rebidding in January will bring back some favorable bids. If we are continuing to be over budget again, we'll have to make a request. I can't stress enough, this is an important project for the park system. It'll be the only all-inclusive playground that we have. And considering we're removing 3 playground systems this fall, we're scheduled to remove 3. This is going to be a wonderful addition to the park system. So again, this is, the delay in this project is some weather-related, some soil conditions certainly have changed on us, and then these higher bids today.
Well, my granddaughters can't wait, so we're eager here. George?
What was our bid, our projected bid? What, our engineer's bid?
They were estimating right around 189,000.
Okay.
We are short. We also, there are components of this project that aren't in this bid package as well that are related to the equipment, the surfacing that we're using state contract for. So,
What's the total project cost? Do you remember?
it ranged anywhere between 650 to 700,000 total.
All right. Anything else before we vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Item 4.3 is the airport snow removal equipment building acceptance of state grant and award project.
Move
Make a
to
mo-
approve that attached resolution.
Second.
Motion by Al, seconded by Michelle. Discussion? George?
When do we expect this building to be built? I know we've been talking about it for about the last 4 years.
It's just been 4 years since we received bids on this. We anticipate that construction will start with some of the foundation or maybe some of the utility work. But as far as the actual building, that won't be completed until next summer, next fall.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 4.4 is the airport snow removal equipment building award contract to T2 Contracting.
Move to approve that attached resolution awarding the contract.
Second.
Motion by Al, seconded by Michelle. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 4.5, the Mankato Avenue Railroad Advanced Warning System.
I would move to approve the attached resolution.
I'll second that.
Motion by George and seconded by Paul.
With great
Talking
enthusiasm.
about long discussed projects. Michelle?
Where do we foresee that 70,000 coming from?
Mayor and Council, my proposal is a combination of primarily streets and alleys, some of that work materials, and if needed to, we have some available in flood control, as well as general revenue, so we can go there.
Okay, and is this looking at doing the 3, or there says alternate 1 on here, and I'm not sure if that was included in the 70?
The estimate is with, I think it's without it. We'll just have to see what the bids come in at,
Yeah.
if that was included or not.
Well, I don't know that one is the problem, because you
I'm not
can
too
see,
excited about
you
that.
can see the cars lined up when you're coming down County Road 43, aren't you?
Totally agree.
The other ones are far more important, so.
Paul?
So I know that Highway 43, Mankato Avenue is going to be on the docket to be redone sometime in 3 or 4 years, 2 or 3 or whatever it is. if these go in next spring, then are we gonna be paying another $70,000 to put them back in once we tear up the street and rebuild Mankato?
No, this will be able to be, it's the same folks that are designing both Highway 43 and doing this, so they're aware of that. So there may be some modifications, but not the whole unit. It should just be part of it, if any.
I can say, and I can assure you, as a resident of that part of town and a person who's gonna be living on High Forest, I'm really looking forward to it.
I think a lot of people are. Anything else? George?
So one person asked me, is it going to indicate also an alternate route going left or, going west or going east, or just notifying that the crossing is blocked?
It'll just be, it will not tell you where to go. It'll just tell you that it's blocked.
All right.
I'd say go to Franklin.
That'd be a really fancy system for 70,000. Turn right.
Turn around.
All right, I
Move.
think we're ready to vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Under new business, item 5.1 is tax forfeited properties.
I make a motion to have the properties put up for public auction.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Paul. George?
Just reading this here, does this go up to the general public, or is this given to, talk to somebody about the neighbors may have first choice at this? Is that something we decide, or?
Mayor, council, with passing this resolution, the county would first reach out to adjacent homeowners
Okay.
and property owners.
Okay,
And then from there, if there's not interest, it's going to get opened up for the general public auction.
okay,
At least in the past, that's how they've operated, people who work with
okay.
neighbors.
So the neighbors would have a shot at it first?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Item 5.2 is the Minnesota Historical and Cultural Heritage Grant for the Winona Athletic Club. Move to approve.
Second.
that.
Who made the motion? Michelle made the motion and seconded by Pam. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Item 5.3 is Michaelwood Drive and Thomas Lane Sewer and Water Extension.
I make a motion to approve the attached resolution.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Al. Discussion? Hearing.
I'm just going to say that according to the council agenda item, this is something that residents in that area would and do desire, and it helps them now and in the future, so it's a good project going forward.
Paul?
I just want to be clear that the 400,000 is part of the 1.7 million, not in addition.
What was the question?
The 400,000, the road portion, that is part of, not in addition, okay?
Anything else? George?
And the sewer and water is what is driving all the annexation, so good project.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, Pam?
Yes, I did not receive a map with the potential utility extension, so I didn't get a map with my papers. I did go on Google Maps, but I'd like to know if there is, what is there beyond that? Are there other properties that will come in a year and want to be included?
No.
Mayor and council, not sure why the map wasn't in there.
Okay.
It's cul-de-sac on both ends, so it's dead end. This would be the end of the valley.
Okay,
So this would be it.
Nothing else buildable beyond.
good, thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions? Comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Item 7.1 is council concerns.
We'll start with Al tonight.
Yeah, I concur with the mayor and city manager to thank all those who helped with the Minnesota House of Representatives mini session last week here. I know the representatives that I talked with at various functions had very positive comments about our community and the area and our part of Minnesota, and apparently with the hearings that were held in this chamber during some of the events, we've worn out the PA system. I'm sorry if it cut out for those that might have been watching on TV or so. I see the microphone here and up there was cutting out, but it was really interesting. I thought it was fascinating. I didn't attend as many as I'd like, but I did attend at least a couple, and it was very, very fascinating to watch how they proceeded with their deliberations and how they welcomed testimony and took testimony during the session, so it was very, very nice. And finally, go Twins.
Eileen?
I have a question about, I've gotten a few emails from families who live at Olmsted and Broadway about concerns about crossing the street, and just wanted to ask if there's any way we could get a flashing, if we have anything that can be moved over there, or there's a flashing sign elsewhere that has served its purpose and we can try something else, but there's a lot of young families living right there, and there's a lot of concern about crossing the street, and as I drove down that curve tonight, and people do whip around the curve from McBride going towards
It's the
Huff
stop
pretty
sign.
quickly.
It's the
Yeah.
stop sign. They get frustrated, so they speed up around that corner.
Right, but, I mean, there's been accidents there, and there's also small children running around, so.
We'll
just-
study it and
yeah.
get back.
Thank you. And just wanted to also reiterate that it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that in Winona County alone, the services here have serve over 1,000 clients every year. Just in our county, victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, men and women and children. So just for folks to be aware of that it does happen in our community, and there's events going on throughout the month if you want to learn more about what you can do, and I hope everyone will be aware of it.
Okay, Michelle?
I'm glad you're both here. I've gotten a couple phone calls from Junction and College View behind St. Mike's Field over in that area. I think a few years back, we put in some drains on one side of the street, and the street's in kind of bad repair, and now the water's all rushing towards the side of the street where there are not drains, and the curb is sinking below the street. And I'm hoping we can look at that as one of the street repairs, since it's such a very short section of street for 2020 or 2021. I did drive in there, and again, we come down to this, people trying to sell homes, and nobody gets out of the car because you get out into a lake. Not that it's our problem, they're trying to sell the house, but when you drive in there and the street is that poor, I mean, it's clearly sunk. Perhaps we can look at that for 2020. Otherwise, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone who helped with the Polish Festival. It was a great turnout. George is wearing his 2020 shirt tonight. That's great, George. We're getting geared up for that, and that was a great indication of how excited people might be about some of the Polish activities we have planned for 2020. That's all I have.
Beautiful weather, too.
Yes, it was the perfect day.
Pam?
I can't wait to learn my first words of Polish in time for the festival.
Sotik seš?
Jani
Something
kochani.
like that.
Yeah.
Was that a toast?
Jak ty Jesus Knopia?
Dzień dobry. You can do it. It's easy.
I do have a concern, and I'd like to know, is the city planning any kind of a comprehensive look at both the lighting and the pedestrian crossings downtown? We've had, at the last meeting, we had a request for a blinking light or some kind of control over there on Second Street in Walnut. Other people have talked to me about other intersections, and it just seems like it's time to take a look at what's happening, especially with the new development right down on Main Street, Main Square development. Are we going to take a comprehensive look at where the blinkers are and where the lights are and the signs? I think it's time.
Okay. Paul?
Just a couple of things. A lot has been said about the mini session, and I can't, I think, say more about how our staff and my colleagues performed at the mini session. I'm really proud of the city and what we did. I also, just tailing on what Al said, what I noticed was despite the political rift between different members in the House, they were very respectful and honored each other and agreed to disagree and did their work very respectfully. And I just want to say that we've always been that way here in council, and I admire that and appreciate that. Another thing, so I've actually gotten a couple of calls about the salt pile at the port, which isn't covered. And so, and the concerns are certainly environmental and about salt getting into the river. And so is that something that we can monitor? Can it be covered? Who manages that? I guess that would be a concern. More than one call. That's it, thanks.
Okay. George?
Thank you. I believe with that salt, I think they're still unloading salt, are they not? And then I think once they're all through unloading, then I believe they start to cover the pile if I'm.
And there could be some sort of drainage system, I'm not sure for that, to
so,
prevent that from happening, as you're indicating, Paul.
yes, so.
We are in the middle of that storm water project, so.
Okay, and I guess, not to swear because I don't hate to use these words in public, but when is the mill and overlay project going to start?
That kind
It's
of swear.
October, where is it?
Okay, do they plan on getting everything done this year?
They tell me.
Okay,
Return my phone call.
okay.
Not without asking, yeah.
And again, yesterday as well, too, thanks to all the volunteers down at the Polish Museum Festival yesterday. It was a great time, so, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Under the,
Steve was the big winner. You didn't even bring in his award.
Oh, I did.
It's here.
Yes.
I thought it was laundry, but it is, I thought it was, George gave me his laundry, but it is the quilt.
I thought he was gonna wrap it on you in like a
No, we did win a.
sign of respect. Yes, in a James Brown kind of way. I was really hoping for that. Sorry.
It's a
Monica.
very beautiful quilt, so.
And the Sarvies do my laundry, so. I'll pick it up on Friday, so.
Walked into that one. That'll be the front page of the Post.
Oh, yeah.
Hope you like starch.
All right, moving on.
okay. The consent agenda, there are 3 items. Approval of the minutes from September 16th and the final adoption of 2 ordinances. And I would also request that you approve the summary ordinance for publication on both of those.
So move the consent agenda along with the summary
Second that.
of the other ones.
Motion by Al, seconded by Pam. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.